So good afternoon and welcome to Yeshiva YouTube Table Enabled. Today we're doing Siman Kuf Pei Gimel 183. Arachayim Mavarach Echis Nahig Bekoshel Berchas Hamazon. When you make a zimun, and like we mentioned yesterday, some people have the minhag to make it on wine, on a glass of grape juice or wine. How should you deal with this cup of wine? Are there halachas? There are a lot of halachas that apply. The Gemara says in brachas there's 10 halachas that apply to a koshel bracha. I discussed yesterday even to lean on the two different types of koshel bracha. I'll elaborate that more on that in to lean on today. Let's get started. Aleph koshel bracha ton handacha mibifnim v'shtifa v'chutz. If you can use a kos for a bracha, for birkas hamazon, for sheva brachos, things like that. So kiddush, obviously, you have to wash it out. Hadacha mibifnim. Wash it, I guess, with soap outside. Shtifa, just water on the outside. Even when naki, the ein bo shiurei kosos ein osarach. If it's clean, meaning if it was washed out last week and then it's next Shabbos, you don't have to wash out another time because it's clean. The purpose is it should be clean. Beis yayin, yiten hayayin letocho chai. You should put the wine in it. Now chai, the Gemara says chai. Now most people translate chai means that it's undiluted. The wine in the times of the Gemara used to be undiluted. They used to mix it with water. We'll leave it at that explanation. Until you come, we're going to see that the way that the Shulchan Aruch sets up zimun is that one person is making the entire Birkas Hamazon, and everyone else is listening to him. The Ramah does say, and the Shulchan Aruch says that you should maybe quietly, under your breath, say the words with him, but technically you don't have to. Really, the way zimun is thought of, according to the Shulchan Aruch, is that your yotzei shomei ka'ona. Our minhag is not to do it like that. Everyone to talk about it, but everyone to say the words themselves. But the person, when you put the wine in the cup, it should be not diluted. When you come to the bracha of nodelecha, as mozgo, and then you add the water, the diluted lodia, shavach haaretz, because that bracha of nodelecha talks about eretz chemda tova rechava. Talk about the beautiful land of Eretz Yisrael. So therefore, you make the wine suitable to drink at that point. Hagav Yeshomrim Nima Yayin Eno Chaza Eno Sarach Lemos. The Rama says, in the name of the Torah, if it's not strong like our wine, you don't have to dilute it, right? You wouldn't dilute our wine; it's already been diluted. That's what the minhag was. The Rama says, when you take it out of the barrel of wine and you pour it into the glass, you should have in mind you're doing it for the bracha of Birkas Hamazon. We don't have a lot of wine. When you pour it from the bottle, right? We don't pour from a barrel. You pour from the bottle. That you should have in mind. Not specifically a barrel. This is what the Gemara says. The Gemara says it calls it male. Male means it should be full, completely full, up to the rim, the brim. Not the brim, the rim of the glass. Now, what does that mean exactly, the rim of the glass? So, Mishabura has two opinions. Even if some of it's going to fall, right? If you really try to fill it up with the top of the glass, a lot of times it's going to spill over. That's okay. That's what you're supposed to do. Second opinion, some fill it up to close to the top so it won't spill over. It's still called mole. I want to talk about these 2 days because I've gotten into a lot of fights with other people about this when I make kiddush, and I don't personally fill it up to all the way to the top. I still believe it's called mole, and I would write that it's more called mole like this than mole when you fill it up to the top to the point where you pick it up, it's going to spill over. Gimel sarach lach sarach hakos sholim. You're supposed to try to have a kos that doesn't have any holes in it. If it even has a small hole, right, it's not good. If the cup can't hold a revius, I believe it wouldn't be a kosher kos. But if it could hold a revius, then it's a mitzvah in a mufkar that it should be completed. When you accept it, you should accept it with two of your hands. You don't really see this too much, but again, you don't see a lot of the world people benching on a kos. But when I was from and went to Avrechim's house for Shabbos meals, when I was a young bacher, and I was in Shar Yashav in America, and I was like 24 years old, 25 years old. And, they never had meals in Shar Yashav, Shabbos meals in the yeshiva, which made it very difficult because I wasn't the most popular guy. No one was inviting me really over, so I had to find meals. So they had someone, a facilitator, who helped find meals. So I asked the guy to help me out, and he was sending me to these. Shayashav is in Lawrence. A lot of people that dominate are very wealthy, rich people, and he was sending me to these very wealthy, rich people's houses, and I didn't like it because I wanted the feel of an avre, a feel talk about Torah at the table, not talk about how much the lady, all the houses around the block are going for, and I felt this was the wrong spirit of Shabbos. So next Shabbos, I asked the person only set me up with Rebbeim or Avrechim in the Kollel. So therefore, I was very accustomed to seeing either when I got it, because I knew the halacha, I learned the halacha, or other people they got it. A lot of them, you give them the kosher bracha, they pour it. The balabayas pours the cup, and he gives it to you. You would take it in both hands. One hand, the right hand taking the cup, and the left hand supporting it, like the Shulchan Aruch says. And then when he's benching, he holds in the right hand. You should take your left hand away. Right, you shouldn't touch your left hand to the cup. What they're gonna put, you need more support. It's a heavy cup. You want to put your left hand under your right hand. That's okay. If you're like in Asia, maybe in Japan or something like that, you're sitting on the floor. So make sure the cup is a tefach off the ground. More commonly, if you're sitting at a table, you should take the cup a tefach off the table. You should look at the cup. Now, Haga, the Rama says, I guess they used to have these cups, maybe like mini shot glasses, where it was very narrow opening on top. And according to the Rama, the whole Indian is to see the actual wine. But the Mishnah Berurah says, really, when the Gemara says that you should look at it, you're not looking at the wine, you should look at the cup. So therefore, it will be okay to take this gluck whatever it was. One of those flute glasses. You see one of those flute glasses, very small on the top, the opening. Now, you're the guest. He asks you to be a mavarech. Who do you give the cup to after? You give it, like Gemara says in brachos, you give it to the wife of the host. You're supposed to, the Mishnah Berurah says you should also give it to other people to drink, but because the bracha in a house, right, the success of the house is dependent on the woman, and therefore you give her the kosher bracha so that she should have success. Hey, even if it seems a little strange to you, you should give it to the host's wife, right? But this is the halacha. Can I say? Hey, yesh misha omer shim mavarich iter. If the mavarich is a lefty, ochis hakos piyamino, shu small kol adam. He puts it in his left hand. Call it his right hand, but it's the left hand, which is his stronger hand. This is a yesh misha omerim. It's not likuva. The Mishnah Berurah says vav. Once the person who's benching gets the cup of bracha, he shouldn't talk anymore. Everyone else should stop talking once he starts the zimun. Of course, when he's in the middle of the bracha, he shouldn't be talking so they can hear Shomea Ka'ona and Beyotzi Berkaz Mazon. Alafilu ben bracha lebracha. Even he says he concludes the first bracha, and everyone's amen. He hasn't started the second bracha. He still shouldn't be talking. We shouldn't talk. If between the brachas, when he's not talking, they speak, they're yotze. Even the mavarech, technically, with the evet, his hefsek is not a problem. If they're talking while he's saying because Muslim, they can't be yotze shemei kona because you can't hear, right? Even if technically you're speaking very low or in a very low voice, nonetheless, your words are mavatal l'shemei kona. If you're talking zayin nachon adavar kolechem ha'usubin yomer balacha shem mavarech kol bracha bracha. This he quotes from the Shibboleth Eleket. The right thing to do is to mumble along the words with the mavarech. Afilu hachasimos, even the ends of the brachas, right? Haga, there must be active Musayim ksas kodam mavarech kadeshiana ameng to el simon and ted nothing. So even when you're saying the words, the best thing to do is say the words along. You should the end of the bracha you should say quietly before mavarech finishes the bracha. So when he says the bracha, he finishes the bracha. You can answer amen. Ein nosen koshel bracha ella letovayin. The Gemara says, Parak Elin Amarin, I think in Sota, you should only give Tov Ayin Hu Yivarach, someone who's a generous person. Technically, if you're looking for a person, you have guests who come to your house. You want to know who should give the kos to. If you don't have a Kohen there, so Give it to the person, who's a generous person, because he'll bring more bracha into your house. What about if an important person comes in the middle of benching? Can you stop? Right? Someone, a president comes in, or an important person in the community comes in. Can you interrupt your benching to greet them or to respond to them? So the Shulchan Aruch paskins that really it's like tefillah, where you can't stop for any, even for a king, you don't stop, even to respond to a king, because unlike Kriya Shema, which you can say technically while you're walking, tefillah you have to be sitting. We'll see in the same place. Ted sarach leishev b'shashim uvarich. Like I just said, you have to be sitting when you make birkas hamazon. Whether he's when he's eating, he's walking around, or he's standing, or he's reclining. You should sit down when you're benching, so you should have more kavanah. A lot of people also take a bencher to look inside. He also should be reclining when he's benching, because it has to be in a state of fear. Just like the Gemara says, Divrei Torah should be in a state of fear, so you should concentrate on what you're learning. Also by Berachos Hamazon and all brachos, the Mishnah Berurah says, you should be sitting and not reclining, so you could properly concentrate on the word. Not only the person who's leading the zimun, when they're all being yotzei shmei hakana, they should also not be reclining or standing. Even the mavarich, who's walking around and leading the zimun, it works. Yud. Some say, this is following the sheet of the Rambam, that also main shalosh, right, on mizonos or on the Zayin Minim, you have to also, it's like benching, and you have to sit down for it. The Grasa is really only remakbid when it comes to for mizonos, not for the rest of the Zayin Minim. Let's say you're outside and you're eating a sandwich while you're walking. So in that case, right, if you're in their house and walking around, you should sit down for benching. But if you're on a traveling on a journey or on a hike or something like that, and you're walking, so you don't have to sit because you don't want to stop your hike or stop what you're doing, because that's the whole purpose of your day. You're traveling, so therefore it's going to disturb your kavanah more to stop. This is not just by Birkas Hamazon. Any bracha, you shouldn't be making a bracha when you're engaged in work, when you're doing your work, when you're doing your accounting, when you're taking a test, when you're meeting with a client, or when you're fixing a car as a mechanic. You shouldn't be doing these things because it takes away from kavanah. Of course, there's only chakila b'diavad. You are yotzei. Stay tuned for Ian Tolina, where I talk about one of the halachas over here, which I have an argument with people about what exactly the halacha should be. Halacha Gimel, that the coast, and halacha Beis in the Ramah, it should be mole. One of the 10 things that the Gemara says, the coast should be full. How full should the coast be to be considered a coast mole for a kosher bracha? Stay tuned. Ian Tolina coming up next.